This is the Montana Outdoor Podcast, brought to you in part by Rocky Mountain Truck and Trailer in Missoula, home of Boss Snowplows, CM Truck Beds, and Diamond Sea Trailers. Just go to rmtte.com for more information. And by Superior Hardwoods of Montana, home of the largest selection of in-stock high-end wood products and flooring in the western United States. Let them guide you through the woods at superior-hardwoods.com. Now, get ready for more fascinating topics and the most interesting people you will ever find in Montana's great outdoors. We offer new podcasts most every Saturday. You can get a link to these podcasts by going to our website, montanooutdoor.com, or by going to our Facebook page, or just send an email to Downrigger at montanooutdoor.com and say send a link to my email. It's that simple. Now let's head out with your host, Downrigger Dale, and see what's going on in Montana's great outdoors.
Thank you, Manny. As always, thank you for your wonderful introduction you do for me every week. And as Manny said, I am Downrigger Dale with the Montana Outdoor Podcast. You know, I get the honor of talking with so many of you, whether it's on the Montana Outdoor Radio Show, which, of course, a lot of you that listen to this podcast listen to that broadcast. A lot of you that listen to this podcast here will email me, and we get into some great discussions and that. But it seems like almost every one of those discussions somehow gets into the area of public access. And whether some of you talk about it in, very positive ways, many of you talk about it, and boy, we need more of this and we need more of that. So I knew at some point we were going to definitely do several podcasts about that topic, this being the first one. And of course, there's so many different players in this. Of course, there's you and I. The folks that love to recreate, whether we're out hunting or fishing and on public lands or public and private land partnerships and things like that. And then there's all the different, government agencies, of course, Fish, Wildlife, and Parks, and many other state agencies like that. And then there's federal agencies. And then there's the corporate side, the business side. We have everything from small businesses that, whether they're outfitters or that are out on our waterways or guiding up in the woods, to, very large corporations. Like, for example, Northwestern Energy. They are a major player in all this because they operate many hydroelectric projects on our waterways across Montana, on some very big, important waterways. And so I thought, well, okay, maybe we ought to start there. Let's start with the corporate side of it, and kind of dig into that a little bit as far as how does everybody play together, and who's playing nice together and who's not playing nice together, and that. So I ended up coming across two people that I thought would be perfect to start this with, and that is Kim McMahon and Andy Welch. Now, Andy has got one of those large titles, which back in my days when I used to be with large corporate America, when you got a large title, that means you were overworked and underpaid. And then Kim has her own business, Kim McMahon with Pinnacle Research, but she works together with Northwestern Energy and fitting in how do they be a good steward and a good partner. Now, I went into this with a little skepticism of saying, okay, wait a minute. Now we're about to talk to a major player, a big corporation, and not that all corporations are big, bad, and evil, but they got to make the money too. And I got to say, honestly, folks, I was shocked. Now, pardon the pun, of course, Northwestern Energy, Hydroelectric, but I was shocked in a positive way. This company is doing some incredible stuff. I was truly amazed. So I guess we're going to start on a positive note. Andy, I'll start with you. Andy Welch, Manager of Hydro License Compliance. and Kim will get with you in a second too. But Andy, welcome to the Montana Outdoor Podcast. Thanks for joining me. And let's start with the title. What does this mean when you are manager of hydro license compliance?
Yeah, thanks for having me on, Dale. So, that title is relative to, all of the FERC licenses that we have in order to operate our facility. So, and to really understand that, I'll kind of back up a little bit relative to hydropower and how it's regulated in the nation. And so anybody that is a private entity that's getting a federal permit has to get a FERC license for generating electricity. And our hydropower facilities, we have 11 here in Montana, all fall under that criteria. And so we are technically regulated by the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, and they issue us operating licenses in order to, generate electricity. And so we have 3 of those licenses here in the state that cover our 11 projects. And the goal of those licenses is to balance resource impacts, hydropower generation, and all the things that, we could affect within the systems that we work. And so it's a good balancing act. It's really challenging at times to know, how can we best do business and then, have the least impact on the resource. But then on top of that, we also provide mitigation relative to those impacts that are unavoidable. And Northwestern's view on managing these, incredibly valuable resources is that, we want to be the best stewards we can. And, it's really our privilege to work on these waters in Montana, and they're so tightly held by, so many Montanans and people visiting Montana that it's really in our values that, we're trying to do the best we can while operating a, productive business on these waterways. And we get our hands into a lot of things in order to, help manage and protect some of these resources we work on. Mm-hmm. And so my role is really, seeing these license compliance obligations that we have relative to, fisheries and wildlife and recreation and cultural resources, and making sure that we're implementing the programs that have been developed collaboratively with all the resource agencies that you mentioned earlier, state and federal and local municipalities, and making sure that we're, implementing these programs in collaboration with these partners and doing the best we can to protect the resource that we all value so dearly.
Kim, now what about you? Tell us what your role is in all this.
Okay. Thanks for having me on today. I do appreciate the opportunity to spread this good word as it is. I am lucky enough to be a liaison between Northwestern Energy and the public entities that they partner with for public recreation on all of the waterways that they have licenses on. I'm a private consultant doing recreation planning and recreation research, and I've been working with Northwestern Energy since 2001 on their projects. A little bit before that, but as with Pinnacle Research since 2001. So I help the end of the company, Northwestern Energy, and the agencies all be on the same page and working for the same goal, and making sure we all know what each other's doing to protect the resource and provide benefit for the public.
See, now that's what impressed me right there, was that Northwestern Energy was, obviously there is an obligation. They got to do things right, but they spent the time to hire someone like you to say, okay, be an objective third party out there and tell us if we're going down the right way. Is that kind of what your role is to give them an idea of, here's what I'm hearing out in the public. Here's what I'm seeing going on. Here's where we all need to fit together.
Yeah, in a way, yes. I'm more of a person on the ground for Northwestern Energy. I work really closely with our public land managing partners, and I help Andy make sure that we are meeting all the license requirements and all the obligations under the license to be sure that nothing slips through the cracks. Mm-hmm. So I'm kind of the man on the ground for that.
Well, and to me that means that Northwestern Energy is saying, okay, we got to do this, so let's make sure we do it right. But where I really got surprised is the kind of money that gets spent. I mean, that was very impressive. Now, how does that work, Andy, as far as the budgeting of all this? Is that a requirement that that the state and feds are saying, look, Northwestern Energy, if you're going to operate the dam, you got to spend X amount? Or is this something that Northwestern Energy just says, hey, this is what we want to do to be a good partner?
So I would start out by saying all of the programs that we have that we implement were all negotiated during a relicensing period in the late 90s. It took about 10 years to relicense the Missouri-Madison Project, and then in 2010 we also relicensed and got our license for the Mystic Project, and we're currently in the middle of that licensing process for Thompson Falls. And that process is a FERC-driven process, but it really is all of the players essentially coming together to say what do we need to do here? What are the obligations that the company should have in the next 40 years for their license? How can we work together to leverage any of those opportunities? And so that's what we're living in now in most of our projects.
Mm-hmm. And when you say FERC, explain what that acronym means.
So FERC is the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, and they're the ones that issue us our operating license to operate these projects. And so they are really the oversight on how we do things. But our projects are very unique relative to the hydropower industry, that we actually prefer to collaborate and partner with some of our state and federal resource managing agencies in order to boost both of our programs and trying to leverage some of our private money with federal grant funds, and really try and get as much money on the ground to support these resources the best we can.
Okay. And let's also real quick go over just so everybody gets a good idea, because we're going to speak in terms of projects and that, but what are the main waterways, so everybody kind of has an idea that you guys are operating on that we're going to be covering today?
Yeah, so I'll cover that too. And I guess one note that I want to also add is, the federal requirements that we have through FERC, create obligations that we have to provide mitigation, to have a recreation program, to have a fisheries management program, those sorts of things. The money and dollars spent are not dictated by FERC. Those are dollars that are negotiated between us and different agencies throughout the years to say, how much do we need to, reasonably afford to manage these projects? And that can be monitoring, it can be mitigation on the ground, it can be all sorts of different things. But that dollar amount is actually, delegated and defined within some MOUs that FERC does not regulate. So that's Northwestern's choice and negotiated over time in order to, feel that we are investing in the resource in a appropriate sort of way to make sure that all of these programs are running as they should be.
Okay.
And so all of these monies, as I stated earlier, we have 3 FERC project licenses. And we used to have 4. So I'll start with the smallest one we have, which is our Mystic Lake project. It's up in the Beartooth Mountains. The closest little town to that project is Absaroka, Montana. Mm-hmm. It's a small project in an unbelievably beautiful place. If you've ever hiked up to Granite Peak in the Beartooth, you've walked right by our project most likely. And we have no problems finding volunteers to do anything up there relative to environmental work, because you can't really pick a more beautiful place to work. So that's our smallest project. And then we have the Missouri-Madison Project, which, FERC licensing is usually 1, 2, maybe 3 dams and hydropower facilities. That project in the Missouri-Madison has 9. So we have anything from Hebgen all the way downstream on the Madison to the Missouri, all the way down to almost Fort Benton. And so we own and operate Hebgen Reservoir, which is just a storage reservoir. It's the only dam we have that does not have hydropower production on it. Mm-hmm. And then downstream, we own Madison Dam on Ennis Lake. And so those are our 2 on the Madison. And then we also own Holter and Hauser here in the Helena area. Bureau Rec owns Canyon Ferry, which is right between us. Mm-hmm. And then we own the 5 dams in Great Falls. And so that all makes up the Missouri-Madison Project. And you'll hear people refer to that as the Missouri-Madison or the 2188, which is our FERC license number. Mm-hmm. But that's, where a bulk of our work is at in Montana. And, it's a lot of river miles, a lot of diversity with, ecosystems and people. And so it's a really unique project. And then our other project that we own is the Thompson Falls project, and that's the first dam on the Clark Fork River in Thompson Falls, Montana. And it's a unique project that we're going through the relicensing right now. And it's quite a monumental effort to license these facilities, but we're about two years into a minimum 5-year process there, where we're working with agencies and doing studies and trying to figure out what types of impacts we have and on what resources, and then from that point on, we'll propose how we operate the project and propose mitigation associated with that and those sorts of things that FERC will then pull all that together, and we'll have a license hopefully by 2025 that we can implement for the next 40 years.
Okay. Now, Kim,
and I was just going to say real quick too, we used to own Kerr Dam on Flathead.
Oh yeah,
and that's a unique situation. I was actually came over to start working with the hydros on the private sector side in 2011, and that was when PPL Montana owned the dams. And as many people know, in Montana, there's quite the storied history with generation assets here in the state, and especially the dams. But I was fortunate enough to be part of the sale of those dams from PPL Montana to Northwestern Energy. And a lot of people really felt that was kind of bringing those dams back home, as a lot of the employees for Northwestern Energy were previous employees with Montana Power. Mm-hmm. And, it was just a really great transition. And so when we did move over to Northwestern Energy, we also had Kerr project on Flathead Lake. So that one technically is on tribal lands, and we were required to offer that up for the purchase by the Salish and Kootenai tribes there. And so that acquisition happened in 2015. So kind of a downer for Northwestern in a way that, we had that great project, and the first year that they owned it again, that was sold to the tribe there. So lost a big generation source, an incredible environmental resource there. But so now we're down to just the 3 FERC projects currently.
Okay. Now, Kim, give us an idea of some of these projects that you are out hearing about and seeing. When I was doing a little research on this, I noticed there's a tremendous amount of grant work that goes on, that there are a lot of organizations and that say, hey, I need to help with getting this trail built, or boy, we need to expand. Like one was Craig, which is such a huge that whole area, that little town just comes alive with fly fishermen and that. And one of the complaints that we heard so often was there's no place to park. And so there was this huge parking lot project that was done that you guys are involved. So tell us a little bit about some of these different projects and what you hear from people. I would talk a bit about what I hear from our listeners. Talk a bit about that.
Sure. To back up just a little bit before I dive into a project, it'd be good to introduce the Missouri-Madison River Fund, which is the grant program that supports all these projects.
Yeah.
The River Fund was created during the relicensing process in the 90s. It was a cooperative agreement through the public entities as well as the company, the private corporation, to establish a trust fund that the earnings of which could then be allocated to support improvements and ongoing maintenance needs over time. It's easy to build a project, to build a site, to build a boat launch, to build a trail system. Taking care of it over the next 40 years is a whole different ball of wax. So this grant program not only served to build the projects that were identified as needed during the relicensing process, but also to provide the funding to take care of them over time.
Right.
So that's what the River Fund grant program does. To date, the first projects were awarded funding in 2007. So we've been at it about 17 years now. It's been 160 projects throughout the Missouri and Madison River corridor, to the tune of, I can't remember the dollar amount off the top of my head, to the tune of more than $6 million in grant funds. And those grant funds are also matched by Northwestern Energy funds of $1.6 million. So there's quite a bit of money going into these projects in addition to the agencies that are also supporting the projects themselves. Like you mentioned, the Craig Fishing Access Site project that was funded this past year. It's a great cooperative project between Fish, Wildlife, and Parks, the Lewis and Clark County, and the Burlington Northern Santa Fe Railroad. So the railroad property is being leased by the county for development as an additional parking area, overflow parking for people utilizing the Craig Fishing Access Site. A much needed project in the area, as you mentioned. Parking is a nightmare once the season really gets rolling. So that'll be a great addition to the recreation resource out there. Another good cooperative project that was done recently, if you're familiar with the Gates of the Mountains corridor, the Meriwether picnic site dock system that went in there was about a $500,000 project. The Forest Service submitted the application, also put some money in the pot. The River Fund supported that particular project as well. And now that they have a nice dock system where they can actually dock the barge landing and the barge and things like that, they're going in this year to do some site upgrades to rehab some of the damage that happened to that site as a result of the wildfire that went through there in 2007. So these projects are really, the supported projects that are good partnerships. They rise to the top. The purpose of the River Fund is not only to fund projects, but also to leverage public monies. So if the agencies have funding to put into it, then Northwestern Energy matches those funds, and then additional grant dollars are put into the project as well.
See, so this is fascinating because we've got all these different, as I said at the top of the program, all these different players involved in that, and a lot of money involved. But now then it all starts to come together. And so who makes that decision? How is it decided that, for example, at the Gates in the Mountains there, who is the ultimate one that says, yep, that's a project we're going to do, and how does that go together then?
Oh, it's a wonderful process, and I'm so excited that you asked that question. So the process starts on the ground. It starts with the managers that are out at these sites every day. Sometimes it starts with the public. A member of the public will approach, say, Fish, Wildlife, and Parks and say, hey, we really need a carry and boat launch at this site. What can we do to make that happen? They develop a project and develop a project proposal. They bring it to our regional working groups, they're called, where we have all of our agency managers come together, sit around the same table, share their thoughts, their ideas, their challenges, their successes. So everybody's operating under the same knowledge base. They discuss the different projects, and through a scoring and ranking process, they rank all the River Fund projects on an annual basis. And then that ranked list of projects is then forwarded on to the River Fund Board of Directors. The Board of Directors has a representative for each of the public entities that are involved in the River Fund, which is Fish, Wildlife, and Parks, the Bureau of Land Management, the Forest Service, the 6 counties that are included in the Missouri-Madison River Corridor, and also a public representative to represent the recreating public of Montana. So that group actually takes the prioritized list of projects and allocates funding based on that prioritization. So it really is a grounds-up effort. Even though the board allocates the money, makes the funding decisions, they rely heavily on the managers that are on the ground and know the resource and know the needs to tell them what the priorities are.
Okay. Now, I want to take a little break here. We got to do a little business ourselves. We have to pay for this as well, and we've got some great sponsors. So I'm going to take a quick break. When I come back, though, Andy, I want to ask you a bit, and so I'll give you some time to think on it. As far as how does this decision-making process work within Northwestern Energy? You know, Kim's talked about all the different players involved and how it comes as board, but how does that get decided, and what's your feeling of the corporation you work for and how that gets done? So we'll talk to you a little bit about that. But I wanted to talk about one of our sponsors that is involved in the environment, if you will, in a very interesting way. And that's our friends at Superior Hardwoods of Montana. Now, what has fascinated me about these guys, and it's an honor that they love our podcast and want to be part of it, is they will take everything from, well, here's a good example. An old grain mill sitting next to the railroad, doesn't be needed anymore, made out of wood, all that. Instead of that wood just getting tore down and burned up, they actually go in and buy that. Then they repurpose it and redo it, and it ends up in someone's house or in a building. And I had the opportunity to go into their facility and watch just what they did with this old grain mill. unbelievable. And the wood had more character than anything you could ever imagine. On top of that, they were showing me another project that they were going to get underway in their mill. And this was a huge corral that had been at a huge ranch over in eastern Montana. Again, I grew up on a cattle ranch here in Montana. And we used to pile all that old stuff up, especially if we didn't need it anymore, and we'd burn it. Well, no, they went and got this. The ranchers looking at them like, you want to buy this stuff? Really? They go out and buy it and created this incredible flooring. And they were in the process of doing this flooring. That's going to go in this beautiful office. You really need to go see them. It's Superior Hardwoods of Montana. They're located in Missoula, but you can find them on the web, superior-hardwoods, .com on the web. You got to go see what they're doing. And the best way I describe it, I love their saying, let us guide you through the woods. And they have square feet, thousands of square feet. They can guide you from every type of wood you can imagine. So go see Superior Hardwoods of Montana. Now, Andy, let's talk a bit about from the corporate side. So Kim was talking about all the different players involved. You guys are obviously a huge player involved in that. So how does that go from the corporate headquarters somewhere down to Andy Welch and Kim? How does that work?
Well, I want to first say that Northwestern really values our hydropower assets probably more than anything else. It's kind of the crown jewel of our generation. And I think it's for, all of the qualities that, all of us grow to appreciate relative to the, stewardship that we do, but it's also a clean, renewable, dispatchable energy source that really is going to be taxed even more in the future relative to more renewables coming online. And so there's just this inherent value to it that is going to just increase through the years. And so, the company really, really values these resources, and they understand, how the FERC licensing works, and they made that dedication to support the resources and the operations of these projects during the relicensing phase. So, none of this is an unknown. The exact dollar values and those sorts of things are, never established until the year that they're getting proposed and voted on. But the company is more than happy to, invest its money in these resources to keep them running for another 100 years. Mm-hmm. And so relative to the company, it's very well supported. We have a lot of highlights that come out of these projects, but not only on the ground, but, along with partnerships that we build with, anywhere from resource agencies working with Fish, Wildlife, and Parks to working with the local rancher and landowners to get some of these projects on the ground. And so the breadth of, the impact that we have because of these projects is really a highlight for the company. And I have not heard anything but, full support on everything that we do.
Well, what struck me was when I was digging into this subject and doing a little research on where all this fit, I was talking to one of and I won't use their name because I didn't ask them if I could, and I'm not some big Pulitzer Prize reporter here. But in this case, I said, no, wait a minute. Why would Northwestern Energy spend this kind of dough and being involved in this? Sure, you got to do some of it, but why? And it was amazing. The answer is they said, well, Dale, you spend a lot of time out on the river and these lakes and all that. I'll bet you in any given weekend, you probably boat by, talk to at the fish cleaning station and all that. Many of our employees, we all use these waterways. We're all part of it. We live here. And it really brought it home to me. Well, yeah, okay, it's a big company, but it's full of all of us. You guys are active consumers. I look at some of the pictures of like you, Andy and Kim, and you guys are out on the water. So how many employees are we talking about? Do you know roughly how many it is? But what I was shocked at is most of them use these waterways and are recreating just like the rest of us.
Yes. So Northwestern is about 1,500 employees. And that's, our we're the regulated utility in Montana, also in the about eastern third of South Dakota. We provide the electricity in Yellowstone Park, and then we have a small part of our business in Nebraska. So, we always say that relative to utility companies, we're actually pretty small when it comes to number of employees. But relative to landscape that we work in, it's very broad and very large. And our hydropower is just focused in Montana. But you are 100% correct that, there's a reason why, we all either were born and raised here and stayed here, or moved into Montana and decided to stay is a lot of these resources that we're helping to protect. We hold very dear, and we like to use them just as much as anybody else. And to see them protected and maintained over the years is, one of the reasons that they're as great as they are.
Mm-hmm. Kim, how does someone find out more about this? When I was looking at it, I said, okay, I want to see, just what are some of the agencies or organizations that benefited from these grants. And so I was able to pull it up on the website. Is that the best place to find that as far as how people can find out, who has benefited from this program?
It really is. We have a clearinghouse of information on the northwesternenergy.com website. You can search Missouri-Madison Recreation or River Fund or anything related to recreation. It'll pop up.
Okay.
It's a really good clearinghouse of information related to it. It has the rec plan up. The recreation plan is on there. It has the grant projects each year that are on there, the ones that are proposed as well as the ones that are funded. So yeah, it's a good resource. And
if someone wants to give input on this, is that part of the process as far as the general public? Do they get to, I like with the FWP, I deal with that a lot when they ask us, hey, we've got a public comment period coming up. Could you let people know, and so we can, get a feeling for what they think of it? Is that something that is done in this process as well?
We do have contact information on most of the materials that are available on the website, yes. So that's a really good way to contact either Andy or I. Otherwise, any FWP or BLM or Forest Service employee that's within the corridor would be able to point them in the right direction to get us in touch or whatnot.
So
yeah.
I would say that without even knowing, earlier when I was saying that, FWP says, hey, Dale, we've got this major deal that we're thinking about improving. We'd like public comment. That actually might be one of these projects then that we're talking about.
Absolutely.
Okay.
In fact, the Craig FAS project, I believe, has a public comment period open right about now.
Okay.
Related to the design that they're proposing for that particular project.
What are some of the other projects that have benefited from this?
Oh, gosh. At Hebgen Lake, at the very upper end of the project, there have been a number of boat ramp installations and dock installations that have occurred. We did a repair job on the Fisherman's Point. It's an ADA accessible fishing pier that was damaged when ice built up.
Oh, yeah.
And actually impacted the support structures. So we got in there real quick and got that fixed up with the Forest Service. On the Madison River, we do quite a bit of improvements along the various boat launches and access points. Those sites are really busy. They get used really at a very high level. And there's also camping opportunities that have been reworked a little bit to make sure that we're protecting the resource while also providing the opportunity. Mm-hmm. On the Lower Madison, same sort of deal. The Warm Springs access site is currently getting an upgraded boat ramp there. There's a 3-lane ramp that they're upgrading that entire facility, and they're re-chip sealing and things like that to protect that parking lot over time. Down on Hauser and Holter, there's some new drinking water wells going in at Devil's Elbow and Clark's Bay to provide that resource to the public. On Holter, we do have some improvements going on as well. Great Falls, there's some trail work that's continuing, and that's about it that I can think of at the moment.
There's a lot of them, and if you go way back, and I was looking at some of them on the website, I think it goes all the way back to like 2007 or something like that. So
that's correct.
You can see I mean, it's a ton of projects. One that you mentioned that really struck me, and I read a little bit about it, was the ADA part of it, of creating some, that paving and creating some access, and that one is really big. And in fact, I'm going to be doing a show about it with one of our veteran organizations, not about that project in particular, but Montana per capita has more people involved in the military and veterans than any state in the United States. And unfortunately, we've had a lot of them come home pretty banged up. And being that they're from Montana, they love to hunt and fish. Well, that gets into a tricky deal of how can we provide that access and that, and that was a big one to allow that, so that whether who knows why someone may have that handicap, but a lot of our veterans that now they can get down to a boat ramp or get into that. To me, now how was that like spearheaded? Was that where maybe an organization that was interested in ADA, or how do that kind of thing get birthed to this process?
ADA access has been at the forefront of recreation planning for a number of years. The federal agencies and the state agencies are mandated to provide recreation access for mobility impaired individuals whenever possible. That doesn't mean that every site is going to have a wheelchair ramp or something, to that grade. But wherever possible, they like to provide that because they know that we all know that our population is aging. We have mobility issues, but those people deserve an opportunity to recreate as well. We have put in a number of ADA facilities recently, like Black Sandy State Park, for instance, has an ADA fishing dock now. It used to have one a long time ago, but that one fell into disrepair. It had to be removed, and it was a few years before we could get the new one in there. But it's in there, it's ready to go, and it's being utilized. The Causeway also has an ADA accessible fishing pier there at Lake Helena. There are ADA facilities all throughout our entire system for that reason. Well,
hats off to you guys for those kind of things, because it's so important. We got involved in a hunt for some injured veterans, and these were all women that had been injured in the conflicts in Iraq and Afghanistan. And the captain of the Montana Outdoor Radio Show, he went and helped put this hunt together. And he was just amazed at the kind of equipment and things that they had, but then just their courage and their strength to get out and do it. And I just love it when we can allow those people more and more of this kind of access. How about from the wildlife standpoint, Andy? How do you guys get involved in that as far as water quality, fish, that kind of side of it?
Yeah, we do. We have two different fisheries. So specifically to the Missouri-Madison, we have a Missouri fisheries program. We also have a Madison fisheries program. And those are kind of styled very similar to how the River Fund is, that we're working directly with, our partnering agencies to develop projects. We pay for some FWP staff to be on the ground and do the monitoring to make sure that these populations are stable. We also do some like stream restoration and those sorts of things to, enhance the habitats within those areas. And so those are really great projects, have quite a bit of history, and really produce some pretty cool projects through the years. We have a very similar one for our wildlife, and that is for the Missouri-Madison corridor. And those monies are spent a little bit different, but kind of some of the same types of focus, more focused towards like the main stem corridor and a little bit of a buffer there. But we do a lot more habitat enhancement for riparian birds and those sorts of things that, may not solely benefit wildlife, but also benefit fisheries, water supply, irrigation, all those sorts of things in the long run. And, we have a couple that have just been notoriously loved by many and have got national awards, such as Odell Creek, just upstream of Ennis, Montana. We've done multiple phases there, been working on that complex for since about 2004 and invested a lot of money in there with some other partners leveraging federal funds, and have really, really changed the landscape there, working directly with the landowners to develop these, off-stream wetland habitats that, the bird population has just bounded leaps and bounds since that area has been redone. And so those are the types of projects that we'll get involved with. Conservation easements to, protect ground from getting developed that are big wildlife corridors, those sorts of things. And so, relative to everything that we work in, it kind of all comes full circle, and each program really does kind of support each other. But the wildlife and the fisheries really are kind of intertwined on the benefits of those.
So does Northwest Energy then have like fish biologists and that on staff, or how does that work?
Yeah, relative to utilities, we have an extremely small staff. There's currently 5 staff. It's me as a working manager, and then 4 staff. 2 of those are fish biologists. One works out of Great Falls, and one works out of Missoula. We also have a water quality staff that works on all of our projects, and then we're lucky enough to just add a staff in December of this year, and he's really focused on fisheries type stuff, and really at Thompson Falls on bull trout, since they're endangered over there. But we do also have these just great contractors that we've been working with for a long time, such as Kim, to help us implement these programs. We have some other ones that we use on the wildlife side, and so it's really a collective effort, not just Northwestern employees, but also our dedicated contractors that we work with to make these programs as successful as they are.
So, Kim, what would you say is the biggest challenge that, when you first got involved with this and decided, okay, Northwestern Energy wants to work with me and I want to work with them, what was your biggest challenge, or maybe I should put it this way, what was the biggest surprise that you found when you got into this?
Probably the same surprise that you noted, that how much the company actually does to protect the resources and the values that we all cherish here in Montana. It's the licenses that they hold for these hydro projects are very detailed, and they're very involved, and they're very big. There are a lot of articles, and there are a lot of large and small obligations. There's a perception in the public that these corporations are only out for the money. They're only doing everything they can do
Guilty
to make
as
that
charged.
almighty dollar.
That's what I thought when I first started in this subject,
Exactly. But they are amazing stewards of the resource and what we value in Montana. And that's a really big unknown. And it's something that I wish more people understood, because they take a lot of heat for a lot of things, but they never get the kudos that they deserve for doing the good work that they do. And it's the culture of the company. They don't do this because they have to. They do this largely because they want to. Mm-hmm. And it's the right thing to do. Mm-hmm. So,
can you give us a little peek into the future as far as maybe some of the projects that are coming up or being considered?
I asked that of our regional managers recently, and there are a few things being talked about. Some trail improvements potentially in the Great Falls area. There is a project on the Madison that might take off, that may gain some speed to help address noxious weeds along the river corridor, which may or may not fit with River Fund, but there are programs available that we can piggyback on potentially. It's pretty early in the season yet. We haven't really gotten up and running at the moment. So I'm sure as things really get moving out there and people start recreating things will be identified, and we'll get word of those projects as they come up.
Okay. And Andy, we're going to take another quick break here. And when we come back, and you'll get some time here to think about this, because this is going to be a tough question for you. But tell me, it'll be a 2-part. One, what was the most challenging thing that you've been involved in since you've been working in this area? And 2, what project to you stands out as one that you really like to hang on your wall and say, I'm dang proud of that one? So think about that, and we come back. But speaking of getting out to your fishing area or getting out to your place you want to recreate and that, I wanted to talk about Rocky Mountain Truck and Trailer, who's another one of our great sponsors. And we couldn't do this podcast and be able to do it the way we get to do it here, where we get to spend, long period of time talking to people and not have a ton of commercial breaks. And we're really lucky to have a company like Rocky Mountain Truck and Trailer that loves the environment enough and hunting and fishing so much to say, yeah, we'll help cover that. And one of the things that I'm so impressed with this company is, just like we were talking about earlier, when you're out recreating, doing things, that guy that helped to install the new hitch process there at Rocky Mountain, or put that new truck bed on for you, all that, you're probably going to see him out at the fish cleaning station or hunting or doing that. It truly is a family, local business that, they've grown, but they just really have done an incredible job. From, the captain, when in the last podcast, he was talking about a problem that he had in trying to find the right part for his fifth wheel trailer, and Rocky Mountain Truck and Trailer came to the rescue and just did an incredible job with them. You really should go see them and talk to them about it. You can go to the website. That's rmtte.com. That's rmtte.com, and take a look at all the different things that they offer there, from their CM truck beds, which are incredibly popular and a wonderful piece of equipment, the Diamond C trailers, and of course the Boss snow plows right now. Thank goodness winter's finally over. You don't have to worry about it so much, but it's a good time to be thinking about it and getting that thing ready to go there. But go talk with them about what they do. You're going to find that this isn't some little fly-by-night company. I mean, this is a company, that's what they do, is just truck and trailers and getting you moving and getting you going and all the related parts and all that. And the fact that you can call them and say, I just got a question, and boom, they're right on it. And chances are they either have that or they can steer you in the right direction if they don't. So Rocky Mountain Truck and Trailer, I can't say enough about them and the whole gang that worked there. Again, go to them and see them on the web, rmtte.com, Rocky Mountain Truck and Trailer. And thank you guys so much for allowing us to do this program and have great guests on there. All right. So, Andy, I'm going to put you on the spot here. First, let's start with one of your biggest challenges that you came across.
So, probably the biggest challenge that I've had in this, work life is, relative to 2021 was a horrible water year, extremely hot. And, we operate Hebgen Dam to provide water for the Madison. It was a very challenging year on water management for everybody, not just Northwestern. But, different people have different perspectives on how that water should be used. And so, we hear it from all aspects, good and bad. And, that year on, how we managed water, we got a lot of kudos from some people to, really put water in the river, protect the fisheries resource and all things associated with that. But we also, heard it from the pretty significant recreation impacts to the users at Hebgen Lake. And it's a challenging situation when you're limited on resources and you don't have enough water to go around to support everything that you want to, or that the project can support. And so you have to make some tough decisions. And, we chose to put water in the river and protect that extremely valuable Madison River fishery. Mm-hmm. And, we didn't make that decision on our own. We definitely worked with our partners to say, how do we best approach this? And, but at the same time, it's very challenging to make those decisions and then try and communicate, the justification why. And there's just a lot of passion from people on what they want to see out there. And I love that part of it, but it also creates a lot of challenges on years like that when, there's just not enough to go around.
The water's either too high or not high enough. You hear that all the time. what do you guys do in that case where obviously you got to keep the water flowing because there's so many other parties involved, from irrigation to sportsmen and all that. Plus, you got to keep our lights on. So how does that work? How do the priorities get put together in something like that?
So that's a great question. And, relative to our FERC license, there's no prioritization on how we do things.
Really?
And so we actually had conflicting requirements that summer of, providing enough water for the river through minimum flows, keeping the lower river, at a temperature that protects the fishery. But also we were supposed to be able to maintain Hebgen Reservoir at an elevation that essentially supports recreation there. We couldn't do all those things. And so what we always do is, we work with our regulatory partners and say, Fish, Wildlife, and Parks, Forest Service, here's the situation we're in. How do we best deal with this? And so, that on the short term is what we did. And we ended up lowering Hebgen Reservoir, below the summer operating elevation that we're supposed to maintain it at. And so we had to file a bunch of regulatory reports and follow up with FERC, saying, this is what we did. This is why. They put those products out for public comment. And so we finally wrapped that portion of it up. It took almost 2 years to finish that out. But we also voluntarily started a new process that we called the Madison Stakeholder Engagement. We tried to pull together, businesses on Hebgen in West Yellowstone, fishing outfitters, Fish, Wildlife, and Parks, local fishermen on the lower river, someone that lives on Ennis Lake. So trying to pull all these parties together that have these different interests and said, okay, this is what happened in 2021. It also happened in 2007. What can we do to see this in the future ahead of time? And is there anything we can do that would better support all of these resources instead of just having to support the fishery downstream?
Okay.
And
would that kind of fit in with what's the thing you want to hang on your wall to say that this is one of my proudest moments?
I would just say, these incredible restoration projects that we get involved with. And, Odell, I mentioned earlier, is, that's a landmark one that, it was a transformation of the landscape there based on, old historical agricultural impacts. But it's also been just a transformation on, how we look at the land, the local landowner, on how they manage things, and to see that whole package change how that's done. And now their ranch is more productive. The fishery is going gangbusters in that river. The wildlife has just taken off. And to see all of those things come together is a pretty incredible thing. And especially when you start looking at it at 5, 10, 15 years down the road, to see those kind of things mature. And so that's definitely one of the ones that I really look at because, it has the history. But, a couple other projects come to mind that, there was a big restoration that the Forest Service was the lead agency on it in Beaver Creek, just below Hauser Dam there.
Yeah. Very
popular area, and we helped fund 2 phases of very significant restoration there in the last 5 years. And, I'll be curious to go back there in 10 years and take a look at it and see, how is this healed up and how's the health of the fishery and, see what else is using it.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think, looking at things in the long view and seeing how these things change because of something the company's done or something we've collaborated on with another entity is really the, why I come to work every day.
And how about this year? I'm hearing at least a few different conflicting reports. It seems like it's been an incredibly long winter. I mean, right out my back door here is the Clark Fork, and it's getting a little closer to the door. So how is that looking for you guys? Are we looking at too much water, not enough? What are you seeing for this year?
Well, it's never too much water until you get it, right?
Yeah.
If it's in the hills, it's great.
Mm-hmm.
But it really depends on where you're at in the state. Southwestern Montana just got hit hard with a lot of snow, and the upper Madison Basin, we were about 130% of normal. And so there's a significant amount of water that's still in the hills up there. It should be coming off here in the next few weeks. And so you'll start to see some waters rising there. Further downstream in the Helena area, and, we were right about normal. And then areas like over by Missoula and the lower Clark Fork over there was actually slightly below normal. So it really depends on where you're at in the state on, what you may see. And, if we get a really big weather pattern coming in that's really warm and it starts raining like crazy, hold on. But, as of right now, things are looking pretty good.
Kim, what about you? You've been, how long did you say you've been working with Northwestern Energy on these projects again?
Since about 2001.
2001. So that's
Yeah.
been quite a while. What do you see as one of the prouder moments that you want to hang on your wall there and say, yeah, I'm glad my name's hung on that thing?
The highlight for me is the collaboration and the partnerships that come out of these working groups and these projects. I mean, everybody that I work with is just an absolute joy to work with, first of all, which makes my job great.
Mm-hmm.
But everybody is super understanding of everybody else's issues and concerns and challenges, and they applaud each other's successes, and they offer insight and support and background and information. And it's just great to see such a collaborative effort when it's really not required. It's also not very common,
right,
to see agencies reach across the aisle and partner on projects. For instance, last year we funded a project on the Madison. Everybody knows that staffing is an issue. So they didn't have staff for a couple of years to help do some of the things they needed to do at these recreation sites. The River Fund funded a project so that the Forest Service sites and the BLM sites could all be taken care of for one season while they got caught up on the other things that had fallen off to the side of the list.
Mm-hmm.
So things like that happen. I mentioned the Meriwether docks earlier in our conversation. That particular project has created a much larger funded project. The Meriwether docks led to a river management plan that included Meriwether and Coulter and the Beaver Creek area that Andy was just talking about. And that plan was submitted with some planned improvements, which was then funded by the Great American Outdoors Act. So this huge project is coming out of the plan that the River Fund supported through these partnership efforts. So it's those kinds of things, those partnerships that, project that catapult these projects into something bigger and better. That's really, to me, is the best part of it all.
Mm-hmm. Well, you guys have a lot to be proud of. That's for sure. Again, I never expected this conversation would happen. I was just, it's one of those, it's nice to have a good, pleasant surprise like this where you go, wow, that's really cool. They're actually, they're doing some neat stuff. I would love to keep going, but we got to wrap it up here. I hope that I can have you two back again, because I would love to talk some more about that, especially when we get some questions roll in from this podcast, and I'm sure we're going to get quite a few. It'll be interesting to get some of those, and then maybe I can have you back and do that. So before we go, Andy, I'll start with you. Is there anything that we haven't talked about yet that you want to make sure we mention before we go?
My only feedback would be, what you guys preconceived notions of the company, I would say that's the norm. And we're doing what we can to try and combat that. But, as you can tell from Kim and I, and we're very invested in what we do, and we love to talk about it. And, any opportunities that people have to come forward to us and say, what do we want to see here? We're open to listening and trying to cooperate with folks and, try and make our programs better. And so, it's good to kind of kick that, corporate perception and get out there with, everyday people on the ground saying, what do we want to see here in the long term? And how can we make that happen? And I'm pretty happy and proud that we have the opportunity to do that.
Mm-hmm. Well, I got to admit, I next month when I pay my power bill, I'm not going to feel too bad about it. I kind of like this a lot. I'm almost tempted to add a little extra, but I won't. Kim, anything you'd like to add before we go?
I think Andy said it. It's just the perception isn't always right on, and it's fun to talk about these projects, and we love to hear from the public. If you have an idea, I don't care if it seems real harebrained or not. If you have an idea, get in touch with us. You never know. Somebody else might have the same idea, and it might be a project that could really benefit the public and the access that's out there right now.
How would they get in touch with you? Of course, as always, gang, you can email me, downrigger@montanaaoutdoor.com, and I always pass stuff on to the guests. But is there a particular way you prefer that people should get in touch, Kim?
The most memorable place would be the northwesternenergy.com website.
Okay.
If they get into the recreation and the Missouri-Madison pages, there are contact links for us. I mean, we can spout email addresses and things like that, but that's usually the easiest way because Northwestern Energy is pretty easy to remember. Mm-hmm. So that I would suggest they go that route.
And those of you that are listening, in the podcast description, and I know a lot of you don't read, I write those, and it hurts my feelings that you don't read them all the way through. But if you go down towards the end, you're going to find a link to these sites that Kim's talking about, and you'll be able to click those links and go right there, and it'll all be there for you. So after you're done listening to this podcast, go back to that description that I worked so hard to write and go down and click on the links, and it'll take you right there. But Kim McMahon, Andy Welch, thank you both so much for coming on the podcast and for really opening my eyes, and I know for all of our listeners, opening their eyes on the fact that when we turn on the lights, we actually got a pretty good partner out there helping us out. That's a big deal. So congratulations on that, and thanks for joining us.
Thanks so much, Dale.
Thanks, Dale.
There you have it, folks. And I was mentioning my email. Manny's going to come on here in a second. He will give you my email address. And so listen to that, and he'll cover it there. And we always love to hear your comments on the podcast and stuff as well. And, of course, I'm more than happy if you just want to hit my email. I'll pass it on to either Kim or Andy as well. So until then, thanks so much for listening. And, take some time and take the ones you love out and enjoy Montana's great outdoors.
Thanks for listening to the Montana Outdoor Podcast. It has been brought to you in part by Superior Hardwoods of Montana, home of the largest selection of in-stock, high-end wood products and flooring in the western United States. Let them guide you through the woods at superior-hardwoods.com. And by Rocky Mountain Truck and Trailer in Missoula, home of Boss Snowplows, CM Truck Beds, and Diamond Sea Trailers. Just go to rmtte.com for more information. So what did you think of today's podcast? Send your questions and comments to Downrigger at montanaaoutdoor.com. We should be dropping a new podcast this next Saturday. Until then, we will see you soon out in Montana's great outdoors.